Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name's Tom, and my daughter dressed me today, so that's why I look like a news anchor. I didn't have time to set up a lower third scroll or anything like that. We're not going to be talking about politics or news. Just when you have a 6-year-old that says, "Daddy, I want to get you dressed for the day," sometimes you just let them do it. So, what we're talking about today is an M&E, music and effects track. So whether you are a filmmaker or an audio post-production, re-recording mixer, even a dialogue editor or a Foley editor, sound effects editor, eventually you'll hear the term M&E. So M&E, just to show you, well, before we get into the details, I usually do letters like Sesame Street. So today's episode is brought to you by the letter D. D in this case is for deliverables, and that is really what where you'll start to have the discussion about an M&E. So just to show you kind of what we're talking about in a list, I like to be not super organized, but I like to at least write out kind of an outline. And there's 5 topics, 5 points we're going to be talking about in regards to an M&E or music and effects track. So the definition, of the terms and other kind of auxiliary terms you'll hear when you're talking about M&Es, why and when you need to make one, how to create an M&E, some session template hacks, and then gotchas with QC. It all boils down to the QC or quality control process. What happens is you work on this film, whether it's, you're being hired to do the mix or you're helping a buddy out, or it's your film and you're just doing all the work in Premiere or DaVinci or Avid, Final Cut, whatever. Eventually, if your film is going to be seen by an audience, it's going to go out into the world and it's going to be consumed by the masses. Before that happens, there will be a quality control pass. Some technician is going to watch your film and make sure that the quality is good, that the sync is good, that the levels are okay. Oftentimes with different streamers, they will actually change the levels when they ingest something if it's not right. So there's going to be somebody kind of grading your homework when you're done with your mix. They're going to grade the video and the audio. So it kind of all rolls downhill to delivering your files and, like just handing it over and saying, I'm done with this. Eventually it's going to be done. Otherwise it's just going to sit on your hard drive until you die. So definitions, we've got a couple of terms. I like to write it with a little N, but a lot of people do an ampersand, M&E. We've got Marful Studios in the chat, longtime channel members, so thank you for that. And we've been having some really good discussions on our members Discord. So if you haven't joined as a channel member and you want to support me, but also chop it up with other people that are asking and answering really good technical questions, you can do that. So an M&E, music and effects, all type this up here, music and effects. So the definition of a music and effects is just that. It's the composite mix of all of the effects and all the music in a film minus all of the dialogue. So it's going to be, let me type in one more thing I need to define. It's going to be everything except the dialogue. So basically you mute the dialogue stem and that's the beginnings of your M&E, but it's not quite finished. So you will, if you are negotiating with a filmmaker or a distributor, if you are a filmmaker, they might have a fully filled M&E listed as a deliverable. And what that means is that everything that is in your composite mix, your English or Tamil or Portuguese, Spanish, German, French, whatever your native language is or whatever you're mixing this for the native audience, all the sounds that are in that mix need to be represented in your M&E. And we'll talk about why, but a fully filled M&E means that all the sounds are there. Every footstep, every movement, it is ready to be dubbed. And a dub, we'll put this next to this because it's kind of related. A dub, if you're from a non-English speaking country, you're familiar with dubs, they will take the dialogue out and dub it in the native language. So it's ready for any market. It can go to China, it can go to India, it can go to Brazil or Mexico, and people aren't relying on subtitles. And there's a whole industry around dubbing. It's very fascinating. I've worked in it a little bit. It's really cool. But the M&E is really kind of preparing the film to be dubbed. Deliverables, which is our D, there's actually two Ds here. Deliverables are the files that you give to your distributor or to the network or whoever is publishing the film or TV show. They're going to ask for a set of audio deliverables and video deliverables. So it's just kind of an umbrella term for all the files you're handing over. It might be on a hard drive, it might be Dropbox, it might be massive, but it's all the final, like, this is done, here you go. Optionals, an optionals track is really a special track or tracks that will include things that maybe the foreign dubbing companies would want to use, like a scream from a principal actor or singing or different languages. Like sometimes you have a film where it has multiple languages. It's got English, French, German, Telugu. It's like all over the map. So on the optionals track, you might have a different optionals track for each language. And that makes it to where, like, when it's dubbed in German, if you have some German Walla or German language, it won't have to be dubbed, although they could dub it. They might want the continuity of the same voice actor dubbing even the already German stuff, which they'll have to sync like traditional ADR. But they might decide, you know what, let's have Tom Cruise speak German here. And that's why the optionals track is like little pieces of question marks. Like maybe you don't want to dub this. Singing is another one. Not all voice actors can sing. So you can always check with the distributor on what they would like in the optionals. But it's generally a good idea to just have a 5.1 optionals or a mono optionals or stereo. Usually it's mono or 5.1 with anything that you're not sure about. Just throw it on there. And you could have multiple optionals tracks. You might have 5 or 6. You might have 1 or you might have 0. So why and when do you need an M&E? Because this is, if you're an audio professional, usually there's a discussion with the filmmaker of, do you need a fully filled M&E? And really what that is asking is, do you need Foley? Foley can be very expensive, very time consuming. And so what you need to do, whether you're the filmmaker or the audio post professional, is figure out if the distributor needs a fully filled M&E. So you can ask them. You can see on there's usually a deliverable sheet that will tell you what you need to deliver, and it'll say on there. It'll also be a part of your bargaining agreement if you're the filmmaker and you're talking with the distributor. They might say, well, you have to have a fully filled M&E, and you might say, I can't, or you need to pay for it. But if your project is going to be dubbed, it usually needs a fully filled M&E. The only asterisk to that is a documentary. A documentary is a different animal. A lot of the times when documentaries are dubbed, if they're dubbed, they will dip the interview underneath the dub. So you don't necessarily have to have a fully filled M&E for a documentary, but it's good to check. Sometimes they want you to. It's really rare, but it's possible. So just check. If you have ambitions of your film or the film you're working on being dubbed and going to a wide international audience, you're going to need a fully filled M&E. There's also partially filled M&E, which is where it's really just sound effects and no Foley and no PFX, or maybe like big PFX. But yeah, just check and see if you need it. It adds some expense, adds some time, and it's just good to check into. So let me see if there's any questions. We've got 0 questions, which is totally fine. If you have a question, just drop it. I will answer it. I don't care who you are. I will answer it. I usually try to highlight the member questions because they're supporting the channel. But they're generally, like, our Discord has a lot of really cool information. I'm actually learning stuff, which is great. So how to create an M&E. Let's go into Pro Tools. This is going to be platform agnostic. So you don't have to use Pro Tools. You could very easily do this in Premiere or Resolve. You will have to set things up, and there's kind of a, not a right way, but an easy way to do an M&E. And you can see what I've got here. Let me just close all this stuff so you can see like 30,000 foot view of the session. All this stuff is garbage. Okay. If you don't have a template set up for mixing, I've got a couple you can get off my website, or better yet, follow along with my mixing videos and build your own from scratch. That is the best thing because you'll learn exactly how it works. But what I have is I have the original OMF. I've got sound effects, music, PFX, and dialogue. We'll move that to trim. And then these routing folders all feed into my deliverables. They go through some auxes to like route things where they need to go. But I have this session template set up to where every last audio file I need to create, I can create it in one pass. All I have to do is hit record or do an offline bounce. And then obviously, if I do an offline bounce, import the tracks back onto these print master tracks and deliverable tracks. But everything I need can be created in one pass. So I'm not having to export, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times, or reroute my main outputs or anything like that. Like, you can just do it all in one run. You can do it in real time or faster than real time, but it's set up to where everything I need to send is going to live in this session. You'll see I've got my 5.1 mix. I call it a print master because it goes back to the old days of Dolby coming out with their DMU, and yeah, it's ancient stuff now. And then I've got a stereo print master or mix. Then I've got stems, dialogue, music, sound effects, 5.1, and the same on stereo, dialogue, music, sound effects. I also have a web mix, which is compressed to about -16. Which I don't always print, but it's there in case I want to do both a web and a broadcast, or web and theatrical. So I also have M&E tracks. I have a stereo M&E and a 6-track or 5.1 M&E. You'll notice I've got everything in the same session just to make it easier on me, because the other thing that you may run into is a filmmaker or the distributor saying, you know what, give us the M&E, but like, we can't pay you the extra time for it. Just print what you got. So that's why I like to have it all in one session, so that if they say that and they say we don't have the extra day or two for the M&E, I can still print it and give it to them with the tail light warranty of, I'm going to print this, but I'm not checking it because you're not paying me to, so it might not be fully filled. But if you do want to do a fully filled M&E, it's there. What you do is you finish your mix, get to where you're happy with this, and your stereo mix, like you're done. Everybody signed off on it, you're happy with it. Of course, they'll come back later with more notes. But for now, you're done. So the next thing you want to do is save a copy, because you're going to be making changes to the mix that you might not want to be reflected in the English or native language mix. So you don't want to mess with these. These are done. These are done. So go ahead and go File, Save As, and just call it M&E Mix. Okay, now what you can do is mute the output. Another thing I like to do is I like to monitor what's being recorded by having these print tracks be input enabled audio tracks, so that I can listen to whatever, mix or stem. Like if I want to listen to the 5.1 mix, great. If I want to listen to just the sound effects stem, great. Stereo mix, stereo M&E. So mute the composite mix, the native language mix, and start listening to the M&E. And what you're going to need to do, the whole process for this, if you've got everything, you have Foley, you have PFX, you have sound effects cut, it's really just going to be grabbing more stuff from the dialogue stem and bringing up the Foley to equal the composite mix. If you've mixed this, you've lived with it for a couple weeks or months, and you know every frame of it, you know what the footsteps in the production sound like, so you can start going down here and either pulling stuff to more PFX tracks, or better yet, you can actually route this dialogue out to the sound effects submaster. So what I like to do is maybe on this routing folder, instead of going out to this dialogue 6-track record, this will actually go to, you can route it directly to the M&E aux if you want, or you can send it to the sound effects aux. So it's kind of like whatever you want to do. Let's just do this for now. So now you'll hear, when I play this, you'll hear dialogue.
Hey man, you have it?
So we're listening to the M&E, and I think you guys, let me make sure you can hear that.
Hey man, you have it?
Yeah. Okay, so there's dialogue in here. It's actually ADR. So at this point, I'm going to start muting stuff. So I'm going to mute this. You want to hear no spoken words at all.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, we're going to mute that. So just mute the regions. This will give you a M&E that is like really represents the composite mix, because you're just taking out the words. It's like a reverse dialogue edit almost.
Look, if you don't...
You can't have that breath in there, but we might want the footsteps. So you do have to do fades. You might have to do some filling.
Look.
All right, let's move this over. There's a little breath in there.
Look, if you don't want...
And then this needs to get muted. So this is why it can take, you know, for a feature film, this might take you a day or two.
The boss just said you needed the money.
We're just going through and getting rid of everything that is spoken words.
500's a deal. And that's only because that's out of the good...
Let's get rid of that.
PayPal okay? You know, friends and family, no fees. Whatever.
Oops. Yeah, so you just go through and mute everything. I mean, you could start with everything muted, but I like to kind of read it and see.
Good deal. You be sure to tell Sarah hi for us, all right?
So we want to keep this little scuff in here. And you see how the tone dropped out? Now you will have, it's like kind of, there's a little bit of, you know, dialogue type editing involved. So you have to be patient, and you just go through and...
You be sure to tell Sarah hi for us, all right?
Sometimes you can get away with the fade. Here, because we've muted the production, there's the footsteps drop. Like, we've got the production, you know, muted when he's talking. So the production footstep here is loud and present, but then the Foley footsteps are low. So this is why making a copy of the mix and calling it M&E mix is awesome, because then you can go to your VCAs and grab your footstep fader and just bring it up.
Take this.
I brought up the footsteps where the hole was created in the production mix. So that is the basic process. I'm not going to go through and do the whole thing, but you go through, dice out all the words. You know, a lot of the times you want the dialogue editor to keep small movements on the dialogue track so that it's consistent and the room tone doesn't bounce back and forth between your sound effects stem and your dialogue stem. So that's why you have to do this like kind of background work. The other thing that a lot of mixers will do that I know, I used to do this, is just go to your cloth track and just globally bring it up. You can do clip gain or just grab the, all the volume and just bring it up like, 5, 6 dB. The reason for this is that generally the cloth track isn't doing too much when you're mixing the production sound. It's maybe for ADR, it's doing a little bit, or like big moves, but it's really like you could mute it and not miss it. So for the M&E, what happens is all the really tiny movements of like head turns and stuff, it's gone. And so you have to kind of bring up the cloth track to compensate for it. I like to do it spot wise, like go through and actually listen to it and remember like where I heard the cloth in the production sound. You can also, with this setup, you can just flip back to your, your composite mix, your English or native language mix. You can just mute and unmute it so that you can listen and hear what did I do or what's in the mix. And it's really about matching that, because when it's QC'd, a proper QC, and I don't know if they still do it this way, they'll actually listen to both tracks at the same time and pan them and make sure that stuff that is in the dialogues, the dialogue mix with the full composite print master, all that stuff is represented, or there's some kind of representation of it in the M&E. It might not match, like Foley footsteps never match production footsteps perfectly, but they'll try to make sure, yes, it's in the English mix or native language mix. Okay, yes, it's also in the M&E. So that's the whole QC process. So I'm gonna take a short break to look through questions. How often you get a request for BGs to be broken out into a separate stem? Very rarely. I know on bigger projects, like I'm not mixing big budget stuff. I'm working as a sound editor on big budget stuff, but I'm mixing independent stuff. So independent stuff, it's usually DM&E, dialogue, music, and effects. Paul asked, what is a fully filled M&E? If you go back to the start of the stream, I defined it. Fully filled means that every sound is in the M&E. Every head turn, every footstep, it is completely like ready to just be dubbed in a different language. Is room tone not useful for this? Room tone from the production sound is yes. Sometimes, if the sound effects editor did not do their job and they didn't cut, or let's say they didn't do the job the way I want it done, which is that they have at least one mono background ambience that matches the production. A close match, maybe not perfect. I don't want it generated from the production sound, but I want the tonality of it, the pink noise shape, whether it's a rumble or a hiss. I want it to be pretty close so that I have something to hide the ADR in, and I have something that also for the M&E somewhat represents the noise that's inherently in the production sound. So another thing you can do when you do your M&E mix, especially on noisy scenes where there's a lot of background noise in the production sound, is just go into your mono backgrounds and bring it up to try and match the level. Some people will generate room tone using undertone or Absentia DX and just brick it out for the whole scene. You can do that too. The most important thing is just that it's as close to a one-to-one match in your composite mix, meaning your native language mix, that matches the M&E mix. So whatever you have to do to get there, that's the job. Okay, so other questions. Javier says, so you send your print master to the web mix bus and the makeup gain from the compressor to hit the -16 target. Yes. Definitely off topic, but I'll show you. The web mix aux I have, I'll bring this compressor over here, has 3.2 dB of makeup gain. There's also makeup gain on the limiter. So it's about 5 dB on the limiter and 3 dB on the compressors for a total of 8. So -24 plus 8 is -16. So that's how I get there. Okay. Paul says, so you leave the production sound in but take out all the voices. That's why it would take an extra day and have a fee attached to it. Yes. To me, this is it's extra work. It is extra work. This is a separate mix. The M&E mix is a separate mix if you're doing it correctly. So it's a different Pro Tools session. It's a whole day, maybe half day, maybe a whole day, maybe 2 days of work, because the seamless way to do it and make sure everybody gets the same experience, whether they speak English or not, is to go through and get everything out of the production sound that you can. It might even involve more editing of fill to get a consistent, ambience. That's why, like, doing it this way is good in some cases. In other cases, you just add a, mono room tone. You can add it on your sound effects tracks or the dialogue tracks because you're routing them to the sound effects stem. And actually putting it on the dialogue track, then it would be processed the same way as the rest of your dialogue. So once you get to the M&E stage, you're done with the project. So it's very kind of freeing, and your session can get a little bit messy, and it's not really going to screw you up too much. The downside is when you get QC back, you have to fix 2 different sessions because they might flag something that needs to be fixed in both the English mix and the M&E. And if that's the case, then you have to do the fix twice. You could, if you wanted to, copy all the dialogue tracks and route them to, like, basically this whole routing folder. You could copy this and route that to the M&E bus and do this. That way the changes are doable in one session, but I like to separate the sessions because it's just easier. They're 2 separate things. Leandro asks, what's the Discord channel? When you join as a member, there should be a link. If that doesn't work, let me know and I'll fix it. But the Discord is just for channel members, just to kind of give them something extra. Because I don't feel like I do enough for them. So, yeah. Okay. That covers all the questions. So I talked about bringing the cloth track up. You will, kind of like the game is Foley up and editing the production sound to take out the voices. That's how I do the M&E. And that's to just make it like seamless and good for, like, it's the same experience no matter what language the person speaks. And I try to get, the money for the extra day. If I don't have the money for the extra day, then I tell them it's probably not going to be fully filled and it's just going to have the PFX, which hopefully the dialogue editor has split off. You can see this lazy bum only did some PFX, but maybe the similarly lazy bum mixer asked for that. Maybe he said just leave stuff on the dialogue tracks. Always check with the mixer if you're not mixing stuff. Paul says, would you ideally do the M&E after the printmaster has passed QC? Generally, it doesn't work that way. Generally, in my experience, with the independent films I mix, they want all the deliverables at the same time. They want all the stems. They want the M&E. They want the printmaster. You'll get these like super low budget ones where they just need the mix for the screening because they're all about the screening. And so you do the 5.1 for the DCP, maybe the stereo for the DCP, and they say, we'll get the stems and M&E later. But I like to just hand it all over at the same time, because then you have everything and you don't have to remember, like, well, what did I send you guys? So, yeah. And then optionals track, for example, there's some sound designy voiceover stuff down here. Voiceover design. So the best thing to do for this is really you should create a bus. Let's do a 5.1 aux. We'll call this optionals OPT and one new 5.1 audio track. I don't have this set up in my template because it doesn't always happen. You'll have to then go set up a bus. So we'll do 5.1 optionals bus. And also actually 2 because you'll need to print it. So we'll call this optionals bus. Oops. I always forget which it is to go to the next one. Optionals record. Okay. So optionals bus, good. This will go to optionals record. The input on this one will be optionals record, and the output will be monitor path. We'll go input enable. And maybe for the optionals, you'll want to copy the same bus settings as your dialogue. So you just option click, drag it up. Bam, Bob's your uncle. Let's put this in the routing, and then we'll do this up here. So you can set up some optionals tracks. You could do this as channel sends, on here, sends A through E. You could set up a send bus. I know all that stuff is going to be on these tracks. So I think what I'll do is I'll just say this will go to the optionals bus. And then I'll just add some general, I'll add 2 optionals, and these will go to the optionals bus too. And I'll probably want to copy my dialogue plugins because I'm going to be dragging the dialogue plugins down, or sorry, the dialogue regions down to these. So I want to make sure the automation follows edit is on. So now what I can do is just go up here and verify that these are going to the optional stem. There's a little verb trail. I wonder why. Oh, that's from, yeah, these are going out there. Why would there be a verb trail there? Let's make sure these are going. Oh, because I have the reverb routed, and I have a pre-fader reverb. So this is something that might get me in trouble. And what I need to do, this is where it can get really tricky, because if I'm doing it this way, then the reverb is not going to go to the M&E, but I need it to go to the optionals track. So I guess you could automate where, like, the send. I'm pretty sure you can do that. I've never used that in Pro Tools. For now, I'm just going to change it over here, and that's fine. So now the optionals is just the designy voiceover stuff. I also know that for the fight, I'm probably going to want to keep these efforts. Principal efforts are a great thing to put on optionals as well. Make sure we're listening to them. Those will go to the optionals because the voiceover actors might not want to do those, or they might say, let's just use the production or ADR from the principal actors because it just grunts, So it's good to put that stuff on the optionals. You do not want those going to your M&E though. They will flag that and say, no, do it again. Okay. Let's see. More questions. Such a lazy bum. Yep, that's me. Did I miss why you have a suit on? Yes, my daughter dressed me today, and she said, Dad, I want you to dress fancy. So it's not really a suit. It's like a, I'd like to talk to you about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ outfit. Or used car salesman was the other one I got, because the checkers with the weird stripy pattern is pretty janky. So yeah, you can thank my daughter for that. I like it. It's kind of different. Maybe, or a news anchor, like a local news anchor. So okay, optionals track, covered that. So efforts can go on optionals. Singing is a great thing to put on optionals. Whistling, if someone's like, put that on there. What else would you put on your optionals track? Breaths, like scared breaths, horror film, somebody hyperventilating because the monster is about to get them. Screams are great for optionals track. That's something where you'll want to make sure the reverb is on there. But one trick with the optionals track is, used to be back in the day that the optionals track would be mono. If they still want a mono optionals track, just be careful on your down mixing. Maybe only take the center channel for the reverb, but like just make sure it's not doing any weird phase stuff or it's not overpowering, because when you go 5 channels to 1, some weird stuff can happen. High school librarian, yeah, I can see that. That's great. Or principal. We walked them to school, and I was, looking around at the teachers, like they might confuse me for the principal. So yeah. So yeah, that covers the optional stuff. I think I covered everything. I know it's a little bit monotonous doing the M&E. It's kind of like dialogue editing, where I don't want to show you guys the whole process because it's just going to be me like zoned out, clicking on stuff. But as I said at the beginning, the whole goal of the M&E is just to bring the M&E mix up to the same standard and same content as the composite native language mix. So whatever language you're mixing the film in, the M&E should match as closely as possible the mix you've done with the production sound and other elements that you are mixing. So pay close attention to fight scenes or walk and talks, where the production sound has a lot of that stuff in it. For walk and talks, a lot of the times you have to just bump the Foley up 6 to 10 dB, because you can't separate the footsteps from the dialogue. But actually what we should do is let's test out. I know you guys are plugin whores or plugin sluts or plugin junkies, and everybody wants to buy plugins and blow their money on it. So let's test out Absentia DX. They have an Airtone and PFX deal on Absentia DX, and I use this plugin mostly for creating airtone fill for dialogue editing. Every once in a while I'll use the Doppler remover, but that's really it. So there's some other tools for creating an M&E, like there's crop dialogue, cut dialogue, breath fill, but just for this clip in particular, I remember there's some footsteps, and the box moves around a little bit. So I want to see what this does to these files. Because this is a separate session, it's my M&E mix. And you can do this in Premiere or DaVinci. Just make a new timeline and call it M&E. We're going to render this and see how good it does with differentiating footsteps and movement and airtone from the dialogue. I've noticed that this tool, along with other tools that are, dialogue noise, whatever, they don't do good with breaths. So I really want to see how this does. So let's listen. I'm going to mute the surrounding regions just so we're not confused. And we'll see how this does. Did pretty good. There's one little breath chuff in here that it mistaked that. This, I mean, I guess that could be. Let's listen to the original. It's a breath. So that's maybe something. Although overall this saved a lot of time. It did a fair job, I would say. I mean, for being something that's just one click. That's good. So you could also do that, I guess, if you want to just highlight the whole thing. And let's try it on here. There's some lighter clicks in this one that we'll see how it does. You could do this to the dialogue stem too. You could just take, if you've already printed your 5 or 6 track or Atmos dialogue, you could also probably just take that stem and run it through this, and it'll get you, I don't know, I would guess it gets you a lot Might not be everything. Let's see. I think this grabs some breaths. I mean, that's pretty good. It didn't get all the grit from him sitting on the ground, but it got a lot of the bigger stuff, the transient stuff, the lighter clicks. I can see those here. So that's good. That's a useful tool. I haven't used it before for that, but I think I might. There's other things, like I know people will use some of the dialogue denoisers to actually just remove the dialogue, but you get these little ghost things with the dialogue where it's like you can kind of hear it in the background. So yeah. So yeah, there's a tool you can use for that. You could probably use, like I said, you know, Acon or DX Revive or, you know, whatever you wanted. But like I said, just listen to it and make sure that you're not leaving little bits of, you know, ghost dialogue in there, because they will flag that when it's QC'd. Yeah, and if you guys have questions, now's the time, because I'm kind of running out of stuff. I've covered everything. Session template hacks, I talked about routing everything to where you can at least print some kind of Emony in your main mix session, but then probably quarantining the Emony mix, because you're going to be kind of messing with stuff. You know, make a separate project or separate session for that, so that you're not messing with the main mix. You're just doing a special mix for the Emony. But on projects where they don't have that budget, feel free, just print the Emony, just do the little asterisk on your email that says, hey, you guys aren't paying for the separate M&E day, so this is kind of just a, you know, you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit. Gotchas with quality control. This is kind of a pet peeve of mine. These QC nerds they have a little bit of like a power trip, or they used to. Back when I was mixing full time, they would flag the stupidest things, like an intentional mouth click. Like if somebody is going, they're thinking and they're going, you know, like that you want to keep that click in. And they'll do things with the M&E too, where it's like, I can't hear footsteps. But then you listen to the English mix and there's no footsteps. The director didn't want footsteps. They wanted them to sneak and be like ninjas with no sound. So of course we didn't do footstep Foley, because they're supposed to be quiet. They're supposed to be sneaking around. So there's a process with QC where you can argue that something is creative intent. Like, this is not a mistake. I know your job is to find all the mistakes, and thank you for that. We value your input. You're the gods of audio post-production. But we meant to do this on purpose, so it's going to stay that way. That needs to be a discussion with you, the director, and the producer, and then they will normally communicate with the QC house. It's not you communicating, although sometimes they'll bring you in on a call or whatever, but it has to be argued that, yeah, this is not a mistake. This is intentional, and I'm not calling you an idiot for flagging it, but we're going to keep it this way, so, you know, pound sand. So they will flag stuff. They will flag things that are out of sync. They'll flag ticks that you need to keep in there. They'll flag ticks that shouldn't be in there that you missed also. They'll flag missing Foley, stuff that's out of sync. There's things that they'll flag that are out of sync that are fine. They didn't flag in the English mix, but they flag in the M&E mix. So just make sure, if you're having a QC process, that you either address each of the, I forget if it's like 2s and 3s, or that you argue why they're in there, and don't just, you know, make some BS about, well, it's okay, don't worry about it. Like, if you make a mistake, you have to own it and fix it. But the quality control, the QC houses, I believe they're doing more AI stuff now, so I'm sure there's going to be extra stuff that a human would be fine with, and the AI is like, no, I don't like the ticks in this. and then you have to say, well, it's a crinkly bag. It's all ticks. Like that's the sound. So, yeah, so the overview, we did definitions of the terms, M&E, fully filled, a dub, foreign language dub, deliverables, optionals track. Kind of showed you guys how to make an optionals track. Why and when you need an M&E for docs, you may not need it. They're going to want dipped and undipped stems, which I have a video on that. How to create your M&E. You can create a separate session. You can do it kind of a half-baked one in your main mix session. Session template hacks for routing, and then quality control and what that process is like and some of the things you'll have to deal with. So shorter stream, but let's open it up to questions, both members, non-members, anybody watching. Let me check and see how many people are. Yeah, it's kind of a dry topic, so we don't have a ton of people on. I mean, a decent amount, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, so let's say 5 minutes for questions, and then I'll get to work with my main job today, which I could talk about some stuff I've been working on. I think, yeah, I can talk about a couple of the shows I've worked on. Outer Banks season 4, I cut ADR for most of the episodes on that one. Okay, that one I can't talk about. Paramount Plus, I edited dialogue for the show called Lioness. That's season 2. I cut dialogue on all 8 episodes. I think one of the episodes I couldn't do like part of it because the schedule got a little bit wild. But that's a show you can check out that I worked on. There's the show that I can't talk about. That's going to be out, I think, soon. And another show I can't talk about will be out next year. So I've been super lucky to get this work to kind of fill up a couple months of time. And really appreciative of that. I'll probably have another slowdown soon, like maybe a couple months, couple weeks. So I'll probably do more videos, probably also get outdoors and just kind of like, wait for the next project to roll around. Okay, so Paul says, are the QC guys ex audio post guys? They are. They tend to be. I've met a couple. They're the guys who play Warhammer and Dota, and they're really into something. It could be knife making or miniatures or like they're just usually weird. This is all stereotypes, of course, and not accurate at all, but yeah, I've met a couple and like they're like the comic book guy from Simpsons. Like they just want to be critical of stuff. So, and some people get roped into it like it's their first job or whatever. I think it's good. I think it'd probably be good to work in QC before you go to audio post, because then you get ideas of like things that get flagged and also just get to hear a lot of mixes. So yeah, definitely nerds. But the thing is, in the past like 15 years, nerds have become cool. Like there's the whole sexy nerd thing where they're not really nerds. They just are like live streamers and they play video games. But there's like the real nerds where it's like there's a smell about them and they're very particular about food, and they really like Japanese food, and like you kind of don't want to visit their house. So that's like that's like the OG nerds. Yeah. Any questions? I'm going to give it like 2 or 3 more minutes and then I'll sign off. I know this wasn't the normal hour stream, but M&E is kind of like ADR. Not a lot of people like to do it. I love it. I love watching the final M&E with no dialogue because I remember all the dialogue. So I'll maybe like hear it in my head, but it's cool to just watch and listen to the backgrounds and all the sound editing that happened. Okay, do you do any game audio? I did. I've worked on a couple games. I worked on Knights of the Old Republic for like 2 years. I think I worked on that one, and then I worked on Quantum Break. It was like a Remedy, I think Remedy Studios. But I did the live action show. I mixed and I think I did some sound editing for the. I mixed all the episodes and I did like, I think either sound effects or dialogue editing for them. So yeah, not like Fmod or Wise or any of that stuff. It was all like asset creation. TJ Explorer, do you check for LUFs when printing the M&E? No. So much of that is made up of the dialogue that really you just want all the non-dialogue stuff to match the English mix. So whatever the music levels were in the English mix or native language mix, let's call it, they need to match 100%. Yeah. So other questions. How's the production sound on Lioness? That is like, not super related to M&E, but when you work on stuff like that, everybody's doing a great job. Production sound, producer, locations, actors, assistant sound editors, like everybody's at the top of their game. So there's a lot of work to be done as far as cleaning stuff up, but like everything is done by professionals and the work is excellent. So yeah, no other questions about M&Es. I mean, I understand. So I guess with that, I will sign off of here. Thank you guys for joining me on this stream where we talked about music and effects, M&E, deliverable creation. If you're working on something that requires an M&E, pat yourself on the back because you have climbed out of the dregs of the ultra low budget mumblecore. My friend made this with a EX1 film. Like you're in the realm of making real money and delivering real deliverables, and that is great. Like if you're there, congratulations. And hopefully this helps you kind of get an overview of what the process is like. Even if you're just a filmmaker and you're having to do everything yourself, you're having to do all the audio post yourself, but you want to make an M&E, it's important to take the time to make sure all the sounds are there so that when your film reaches its secondary audience or maybe primary audience, it might be really popular in Kazakhstan, who knows? But that way those people get the same experience as people watching in your native tongue. So it's worth spending the time to do. Even if you're not getting paid for the extra time, just make it, print the file. But hopefully you can fight for that extra day or two to really do a good job and make sure that everybody benefits from that work. So yeah, thank you guys for joining, and I guess I'll see you next week. I'll start doing votes on our members Discord more on like what videos you guys want to see. It was a close tie between, it wasn't a tie, it was a close race to 270 with the M&E, and other people wanted to do a stream on background sound effects editing, ambience editing, or room tone people will call it. So next week, I think we'll do the runners up of backgrounds editing. So that's something I love to do, and that'll probably be a longer stream, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about that. So yeah, take it easy. Have a good week. It's Tuesday, so you've got 4 more days to get some work done, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for stopping by, and take it easy. Any holidays, I might skip my stream, like Thanksgiving. That week I might not do one. I'll have to look and see what days, but the next 2 months in the US are like all holidays, and it's going to get pretty crazy here with family time, so I will update you guys on that. And yeah, until then, take it easy, and I'll see you next week.